Good afternoon, everybody. Today is Tuesday, August 30th, and the time is 1 p.m. Security, could you please make sure that everyone is clear of the lobby and we're ready to begin the meeting? We're here for the purpose of our board briefing agenda, and our first order of business is our LAMP name change. And with us we have Clayton Simmons, Executive Director for School Development, and Mary Grace Romo, Director, Early Childhood Learning Services.
All right.
Good afternoon, Mr. Simmons.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Bernier and Kathy Dupuy-Bruno. Thanks for having me here today. Mary Grace could not be here today, so I will be solo on this one.
Okay.
Get started. There you go. Okay, good. Sorry. All right, so I'm here to give you an update on where we are with the LAMP name change process. As a reminder, I would like to remind you that the first survey that went out, the names that received that came back as a recommendation were Lee Teen Parent Program, Parent Education Program, Student Education Parent Program, and Young Parent Education Program. Those names were then, a survey was sent out to rank those names, and the two that came back with the highest recommendation were Young Parent Education Program and the Lee Teen Parent Education Program. And if you look at the numbers, even though the bar looks wide, it was a very small, narrow margin of difference between the two. What happened from there is that those two names were then submitted to the selection committee, and their recommendation was the Young Parent Education Program. And they wanted the board to know the reason for this recommendation is that this program services students who are not teens, and they felt that Young Parent Education Program better represents all of the students in the program. And then the next steps are that this will be on the consent agenda for the September 7th meeting and for board approval. And short and sweet, I'll turn it over to Dr. Bernier for any questions and discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Simmons. I have no comments other than to listen to the board and hear your discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. Board members, any comments, questions, suggestions? Ms. Jordan?
I agree with the Young Parent Education Program. I believe that's really good. I did speak to someone last night, and they said there used to be a program called the Lee Teen one that was in existence years ago. So I think that this is a fresh start, and I think this is good.
Any other comments? No? And I agree with that. I think that leaving the word teen out is a good decision, and I hope this will help the program. Thank you. Do we want to take a consensus, Ms.? No.
This will come up for regular vote.
Yes, you don't necessarily have to do the consensus because this is going to go to the action meeting.
Yes.
And it doesn't seem like there's any objection from the discussion of the board.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Simmons.
All right, thank
That was
you.
short and sweet.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Have a good afternoon.
Yep. Good afternoon. Next on the agenda is construction change order report with Scott Rickenbacker, Director, Facility Development and Programming.
So as Scott makes his way to the podium, just a reminder that this is his change order report for July of 2022. This report consists of change orders due to direct material purchases, change orders due to non-direct material purchases, and contingency adjustments. I'll turn it over to Scott at this point for his presentation.
Welcome, Mr. Rickenbacker.
Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Bernier, Ms. Dupuy-Bruno. This is your July 2022 as required change order reporting. At the front sheet, you will see direct material purchases. We engaged in $1,045,791.11 worth of direct material purchases. We realized a tax savings, which is a return to the district of $59,475.10. Non-direct change orders, non-direct material purchase change orders in the amount of $111,337.21 was a return of unused project funds for the completion of the Cape Coral HVAC project. So that came back to the district. The backup sheet supports and specifically tells you exactly what those DMPs were for. If you'd like me to go over line by line, I can, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory. I do apologize, staff inadvertently had attached the backup sheet prior to this during the week from last month's reporting, so this is the corrected sheet you see. We made a last-minute change.
Yes.
And in the future, we're doing a process change to ensure that the month and the date is included in the title of this second backup sheet to ensure the accuracy. Any questions?
Thank you very much. Board members, any questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Thank you. You all have a good day.
Yes, and you also. Okay, it looks like we're ahead of schedule. Next on the agenda is the Educational Equity Report for 21-22, and we have Mr. Jared Eady, Director of Diversity and Inclusion and AVID. Welcome, Mr. Eady, and your team.
As Mr. Eady and his team take their seats, just a reminder to the board and to the public, this is an annual report. It's always done in the rear. You have to close out your 2021-22 school year in order to produce the 2022 report. So in a sense, we've already begun collecting data for our next equity report now in preparation for delivery next fall. I will turn it over to Jared Eady at this point to walk you through the presentation on the equity report, and within your own documentations, and certainly the night it comes before the night it comes before the board, you'll have the additional materials of the actual equity report as well, not just the PowerPoint. Jared?
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. Good afternoon, board members, Dr. Bernier, Mrs. Dupuy-Bruno. We are with you this afternoon to provide an overview of the annual Educational Equity Report and the required reporting sections. With me, I have Ms. Suzette Rivera, Ms. Cassidy Kay, Mr. Dave LaRosa, and Mr. Chuck Bradley is in the audience just in case questions are needed. Okay. Our agenda for this afternoon is an overview of the Educational Equity Report, the review of the reporting components, and finally, superintendent's comments and the board discussion. For an overview, the Florida Educational Equity Act was established in 1984 to prohibit discrimination against students and employees in Florida's K-20 public education system and to address equality of access. The Florida Department of Education's Office of Equal Educational Opportunity monitors compliance with statutory provisions of the Educational Equity Act as provided through the State Board of Education. The Florida Department of Education's Office of Equal Educational Opportunity provides an annual update template for districts to submit according to the 7 key sections of the report. And the sections include Section 1, Procedural Requirements, Section 2, Incomplete Items, Section 3, The Evaluation of Methods and Strategies, Section 4, Gender Equity in Athletics, Section 5, Employment Equity, Section 6, Single-Sex Education, and Section 7, Pregnant and Parenting Students. For Section 1, for 21-22, districts should submit any changes to civil rights policies and procedures, including the school board adopted policy of non-discrimination, identification of equity coordinators, grievance and complaint procedures, anti-harassment policy or notification statements. The district should also submit samples of the annual notification of non-discrimination for career and technical education, the continuous notification of non-discrimination, the notice of availability of reasonable accommodations for applicants for employment during the application and the interview process. Additionally, over the course of the 21-22 school year, no changes occurred to the district's civil rights policies nor procedures, and thus there is no action item included for this year's report under procedural requirements. So before you for approval tonight, it's just information to provide evidence for the aforementioned. I will turn it over to Ms. Cassie Kay to talk about methods and strategies.
The process utilized by the annual equity report requires that districts review their methods and strategies used to expand opportunities for students to engage in advanced coursework and to review the results of these methods and strategies by examining the reported data. The School District of Lee County has employed several methods to increase equitable access and participation at advanced courses for all students. Beginning in the 2019-2020 school year, all schools were permitted to expand course offerings to include Cambridge and ACE program, a selection that was previously reserved for only 4 of our high schools. This expansion of opportunities to all 15 high schools was supported through intentional efforts in academic services across multiple departments to provide training and continuous professional development opportunities for teachers and administrators. Exposure to advanced courses was also encouraged to occur in junior year so that students who would have opportunities to further explore advanced coursework of any program in their senior year if they found the experience rewarding. Along with the broadening of the opportunity of Cambridge ACE, each high school is granted a College Board Summer Institute scholarship for professional development of a teacher to their craft, to hone their craft. And we know of at least one IB school right now that has begun exploring the IB for All model. That would allow increased opportunities for students in non-traditional coursework in the IB program to grow and be a representation of their student body in their school-specific program. The data reported here is sourced from the Florida Department of Education's Office of Equal Opportunity. The office includes data for all reporting categories by the district in the state of Florida, allowing local agencies an opportunity to review their progress towards providing equitable opportunities for its student body to engage in rigorous coursework. These data are also an effective tool to explore how partners throughout the state are performing in this field. The graphs shown here demonstrate the annual change dating back to 2016-2017 in the enrollment in AP, ACE, and IB, a relevant measure that was tracked in Part 3, Section 1 of the Annual Equity Report. There has been a steady increase in the representation of all groups over the last 3 years. Now I will turn it over to Mr. LaRosa, who will discuss gender in athletics.
Thanks, Cassie. Good afternoon, Board. Florida statute requires districts to submit data for schools that operate interscholastic athletic programs, as well as other information necessary to determine compliance. Schools that offer interscholastic athletics conduct a self-review of its athletic program and submit athletic participation data by gender and other evidence of its compliance with the provisions of Title IX. Schools submit corrective action plans with timelines for completion for all non-compliance items found during self-review. Our overall participation in Lee County in the 21-22 school year for athletics was 7,044 students. During the COVID year, which was 2020-21, our participation rate dropped from the previous year down to 6,237. So we had an increase over this past year of 807 athletes, and proud of the schools and the work they're doing to get their participation numbers back up as during the pre-pandemic time period. As a district, we added girls wrestling this past year, and we are working to continue to grow that sport. This past year, there were 600 girls across the state that actually participated in girls wrestling in its inaugural season with the FHSA. This year, we are adding girls sand volleyball, girls beach volleyball, however way you want to refer to it, to give our female athletes yet another opportunity to participate in extracurricular activities. And then next year, the 2023-24 school year, we will be adding girls flag football, which is a spring sport. Dr. Bernier and I spoke about girls flag football last week. And so with the addition of these three sports, this will be 3 years in a row that we continue to give opportunities for our female athletes to get involved in sports.
Thank you, Mr. LaRosa. We will turn it over to Ms. Suzette Rivera to discuss employment equity.
All right, good afternoon. School districts report disaggregated data for school or district level administrators, principals, assistant principals, teachers, and school counselors. The reporting tool requires that districts submit methods and strategies to address areas of underrepresentation. Our HR team shares our traditional strategies and methods with the board during our yearly Envision 2030 strategic plan. Additionally, our recruitment team works with the Equity and Diversity Advisory Committee, or EDAC, and the Office of Diversity and Inclusion to receive feedback about strategies and methods. The board's recent approval of our partnership with TPG is a newly included strategy derived from our relationship and feedback from EDAC. So on this slide, we have our table for the Educational Equity Report. The first column shows you our breakdown of groups. So under student demographics, we have the different breakdowns of employees. And then each column after that shows you the percentage that's represented by each of our subgroups. I do want to highlight some advances that we've had in some areas. So if we look at our district level administrators under the Hispanic column, this year we have reported Hispanic level administrators at 8.4%, which is an increase from last year. We were at 6.96%. As well as teachers. Last year we were at 10.95% for Hispanic teachers, and this year we've increased that to 11.43%. And I'll turn it back over to Mr. Eady.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rivera. The final sections of the annual report include single-sex education and pregnant and parenting students. Districts report the number and type of single-sex schools or classes operating in the district. The number and type of single-sex classes are offered as well from co-educational opportunities at respective schools. Where courses are offered in single-sex classes, the districts are also required to report the number of co-educational classes offered for these same courses. In our district, there are 3 schools with single-sex educational opportunities. These courses are offered as student mentoring and leadership opportunities at Lehigh Senior High School, East Lee County High School, and Fort Myers High School. And on our screen are just some photos of those programs. I know many of our board members have had an opportunity to interact with our students that are participating in these leadership courses. And then finally, our last section for review is pregnant and parenting students. Districts should provide informational overviews of their parenting and pregnant student programming. This year's update includes specific reference to the current process for renaming the Lee Adolescent Mothers Program as provided by Mr. Simmons. At this time, we'll turn it over to our superintendent for superintendent's comments and board discussion. Thank you.
I'd like to thank the team. There's a lot of work that goes into this process, and I appreciate you bringing it at our request to the briefing table. I think it's really important for the board to understand where we are and where we want to go in terms of both gender and equity as it relates to the measurable factors that the state of Florida wants all districts to comply with. I think you've provided the board a very comprehensive overview of where we sit currently, and I look forward to the board members' questions and discussion.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. Ms. Bond? Thank you. I'm looking at slide 8, and it's the one that is student advanced coursework participation. And my first question is, what is meant by participation? Does that mean that, for instance, in the ACE program, you can get an ACE diploma, but in the ACE program, you can take one single course. Is one single course participation?
The way the state currently measures that, Board Member Vaughn, is participation would be enrollment in a course. So it doesn't necessarily mean getting the degree. It means the exposure to the academic rigor of it.
We can report to the state participation even with just one course. Does it need to be passed?
It does.
Do they need a passing grade?
So I can help you with that question as well. The requirement, first of all, it's not what we report. It's what the state requires us to report. So these are expectations of the state. Uniform enrollment categories that all districts report. A student has to be enrolled in the course. They have to, that's what the state is interested in making sure that our young people have an opportunity to participate in rigorous coursework. To answer your question definitively, no, they do not have to pass the course. They have to be enrolled. We will measure other things in our strategic plan regarding advanced coursework and advanced credits. We do that work with our strategic plan, but this is not a requirement of this particular report.
Okay. And in the past couple years, general paper, ACE general paper has become, for most students in high school, the English 3, the old English 3 substitution. If a student is taking that as the English 3 substitution, not as the typical freshman year ACE course, does that count as ACE participation?
I'm going to ask a member of the team to respond to that. I believe I have the answer, but I want to make sure that we're accurate.
Yeah, it would be exposure and participation in the coursework.
Because they can take the test.
Yeah, and they're enrolled in the course.
And they're enrolled in the course. Okay, now, I understand this is how we, how we report to the state and how every other district reports to the state. And I am a firm believer of getting our kids to stretch, to take some of these courses. Anyway, I'm not going to elaborate on that part. I think you all know how I feel about it. Do we have, or will, and I know that's not this, because this is your equity report to the state, but I just need to ask, will there be a separate, maybe this is for academic services then, will there be a separate report on numbers of students that actually complete the ACE diplomas? So what AP has, what, capstone, the IB, will there be that separate report? Because to me, as a board member, and a board member who has really championed for 3.5 years things for our best and brightest and getting them again to stretch and to be able to enter some of those top colleges in the United States, will we have, or maybe this is something that needs to be answered later, will we have a separate report giving us that information?
I certainly can work with the academic services team to make some determinations about how easy that data is to pull, and we can certainly look for a follow-up workshop. But for everyone's edification in the room, if we want an example of how well this participation has been driving our academic achievement, we don't have to look much further back to maybe my first or second board meeting when we were named the Cambridge Large District of the Year. So not only are we offering opportunity for children to enroll, but we have evidence-based facts and data that says not only we're allowing more children to enroll in these courses, but our pass rates for those courses have remained at a steady level. You would assume as you open up the doors and create more opportunity, what you'd expect to see with SAT, ACT, Cambridge programs, you'd expect to see a diminishment or some type of dip in the test score because not all students are fully prepared. Not only are our numbers rising, but our pass rates are remaining the same. So I think it's really important that we recognize that while this is what the state wants us to report, we do have those both internal measures and the review of an external international body that has ranked Lee County as the large district of the year because of the work we've done in inclusivity into these programs.
Yeah, and I'm not trying to undermine any of that. I want you to understand, I'm not trying to undermine any of it, and these are great gains. However, as somebody who has advocated for our advanced students, and as somebody who has advocated for well over 3.5 years on having more of our kids stretch and not just, adding more kids because they're taking general paper for their junior English or the ELLs because they're native Spanish speakers and they're enrolled in an advanced course. And I understand that advanced courses are more than just being able to speak, to read and write and interpret. I understand all that. But to me, the true test is the number of kids that have actually gone through these programs, gotten the diplomas in these particular advanced courses. And again, since this is dealing with equity, when we look at that, do these statistics change? In other words, with black students, 40%. Would that look different if we were talking black students or Hispanic, or the white students for that matter, that have actually gotten the diplomas and went through? I have a theory on how it's going to look because I have a picture in my mind of, like when I was at Estero High School, I have a picture in my mind of all the little blonde blue-eyed students in my classes. And that's very anecdotal. But just for us as a district, and again, I'm not trying to undermine any of this. All of what Dr. Bernier said is great, but in my mind, it's not far enough.
When we report data beyond what this specific report requires us to do, we will always disaggregate the data so that you can see it by various breakdowns, including ESE, ELL, males, females, etc. It's important for us to see a complete picture and deliver that entire picture to our community. When you talk about trust and transparency, it's critically important. So in working with Dr. K, and looking at how we'll report data as we move forward with strategic plan data, and we get you updates with the strategic plan, we will continue to provide the breakdowns necessary for not only you as board members, but for this community to see the entire picture of both learning and achievement.
Great, and that's really what I'm looking for as well as this. But thank you for the work that you've done on this. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Patrica, then Ms. Gittens.
Yeah, so is district-wide gifted testing an option? Don't have to answer now.
Universal screening?
Yeah.
Universal screening is something that Dr. Spiro and Jennifer Coopin-McCoy and I have both spoken about. I'm a firm believer, and you know from my interview, that I'm a strong advocate of universal screening in the second grade for all of our children at a district cost to be screened for gifted.
Good, thank you. And looking at this same slide, understanding that correlation is not causation, I wonder how these numbers compare to our achievement gaps in each of these categories and whether there's some connection between the two. To speak to Ms. Vaughn, as a parent, my experience has been that the earning of the diploma does not equate to rigor in the classroom, because there's lots of reasons why I might choose an ACE course here and an AP course there and an IB course there which makes it impossible to graduate at the end with that diploma. So I'm not seeing a lack of the diploma at the end as being an indication of a lack of rigor, just from my own personal experience with my kids in our schools. Finally, slide 11, if we could go to slide 11, please. Mr. LaRosa, you must have known that you wouldn't escape this without some ribbing from me. Thank you for the flag football. I think that's awesome. Any idea how these numbers will change with flag football? If we could, if you have some time to waste and you want to put together a nice new little thing to show us how that will change, that would be helpful.
Well, flag football is one of those sports that can kind of equal 11-man tackle football in regards to numbers, because it entails involving a lot of participants. So we anticipate that helping us, yes.
So getting an idea of how those graphs would change would really make me feel good, just throwing that out there. Is cheerleading included in those numbers?
No, ma'am.
Because it's not a varsity sport, but it is still a physical activity that our girls engage in, right?
Correct.
Okay. Do we have some kind of a plan for each school to individually reach out to girls to encourage participation in athletics?
Each one of the schools has a responsibility in their gender equity plan and their Title IX plan to set an action plan. It's one of those documents that has to live, however. It has to be pulled down, it has to be examined, it has to be part of an ongoing piece of communication. So not only is our district athletic director engaging that, but I'm also asking the executive director of high schools to have that conversation as well. It should be something a principal feels the appropriate amount of pressure to ensure that what he's doing on the male side, he or she is doing on the male side of athletics, they're also providing. We also have to look for things like when a school says they want to put up a new baseball scoreboard. We have to be very cognizant to be sure that the girls' scoreboard is similar in nature. So there's a lot of gender and equity Title IX work that has to be done. But each one of the schools has a plan to address these numbers and to seek a positive change, including promoting junior varsity sports, including the addition, while Mr. LaRosa is talking about girls wrestling and then beach volleyball and then girls flag football as a process to increase the number of female athletes. We have to also look at our current teams and look at what we're doing to staff out those varsity and junior varsity programs.
All right, and then my last question is, did you see the article in the news press about the 50th anniversary of Title IX?
Correct, yes.
It encompassed Collier and private schools?
Yes.
Are we doing anything to celebrate our female athletes here in Lee County in a way that will reach girls in schools so that they can see the kind of celebration and wonderful opportunities that are available to them?
We didn't approach it really from a district standpoint, but the discussion was held with athletic directors about their each individual school in celebrating this inside of their school, because again, inside of their schools, then this would bring the attention where it needs to be to draw those students' attentions inside the school. So that was addressed with the athletic directors back at the end of July when we had our first meeting.
I would love, if you wouldn't mind, to be invited to some of those to help celebrate. Not that our male athletes aren't wonderful, but it is the 50th year of Title IX, and
yes, it is.
I think it's a big deal. So
Yes, it is.
those are my comments and questions. Thank you.
So, Madam Chair, one additional thing that I've not spoken to Dr. Carlin about yet, but I think in communications, we had a great opportunity a Friday night to be at the North and Fort Myers football game. One of the things that occurred regularly throughout that game was an announcement regarding the half-penny sales tax and how much money that actually meant not only to the school system, but specifically to North Fort Myers. There's a very good opportunity now and throughout our basketball seasons and through our volleyball seasons and into spring sports to use those microphones at our from our announcers to announce things about the 50th year of Title IX, celebrating that, being provided a fact or a factoid so that they could read that into the community that is attending the sporting events. And again, another opportunity. And then I think as a board, we should talk maybe in our one-on-ones about what you would like me to provide as direction to staff, potentially as some form of celebration of 50 years of Title IX. It has certainly changed the scope of female participation in athletics.
Like-
And not just athletics, but in all aspects of people being included and our young women having an equal seat at the table.
Yeah, like at South, we just had an AP inducted into the Lee County Hall of Fame, and she's an AP at South. So what better announcement? She was an athlete here in Lee County, a world-class swimmer. You know, I think that would be awesome, but I get excited about this stuff.
Is that it, Ms.
That's it.
Patrica?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Gittens?
Yes, thank you. The question I had, Ms. Patrica already asked about the correlation between the achievement gap on that slide 8. I think that would be very interesting to see, and especially because previously there was a time that there was a push to get as many kids as possible into advanced classes because it affected our funding, et cetera, and showing the ability to show that it actually helps our achievement gap would make it a lot more credible. Like I said, like Ms. Vaughn said, I'm not taking anything away from this report. It's wonderful. I'm just thinking back onto what previously had happened with this. And I don't believe, years ago when I was teaching, if it really, you still got the funding and you got the recognition, but I don't believe it went as far as to say what they achieved from it. It was just, let's raise these numbers. So, like I said, I would really like to see how that correlates. And the other one I have, slide 13. And this is something I've asked about many times when I first got on the board, about the demographics of our teaching staff and our staff in the schools. And I would love to be able to see this by school or by district. The reason I'm saying that is we often hear the community say that our schools or our this should reflect the students that attend that particular school or location. And if this works out that that is the case, then we can say that we do have a semblance of representation of the same demographic in the same schools. This, I see you shaking your head and you're following what I'm saying.
Ms. Gittens, if I can, you have two presentations that are still about to come forward to you. One of them from Human Resources, where we can break down that information even further so that you get the type of demographic breakdown by school and potentially east, west, and south zones. We could do it that way. So I know Suzette's already making a note there. But I think the other piece is, I think we also should have an upcoming workshop, and I have discussed this as Lynn Harrell and members of her staff unpack the leadership pipeline with me. We really should have an opportunity in front of all of you and our community to look at what the school district of Lee County is doing to diversify its leadership path as well, in order to bring people into the process of learning about being an administrator and making that pool of people as diverse as possible, so as it moves forward, there's representation when we appoint a principal to be looking at really highly qualified candidates, period. And then on top of it, we'd have the ability potentially to help match the right leader in the right building.
And I totally agree with that 100%. I think the public has to be educated to understand that even when we do this breakdown and look at this, that we are not saying just because there's this many of, this demographic, we have to have an equal amount. And first thing is that they have to be qualified to do the job. And I think some people kind of just gloss over that and think that what's being said is, we want to put affirmative action back into place. And that's not at all what we're talking about. So I would appreciate that information, and thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Board members, any other comments or questions? Okay, then, Dr. Bernier, anything else?
Not for me, no ma'am.
Okay, thank you very much. We appreciate this presentation.
Thank you for your time.
Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we are way ahead of time, and next on the agenda, we have policy review with Attorney Dupree Bruno, Rob Dodig, Lisa Vasquez, Coordinator Human Resources, and Tammy Scott, Coordinator Teaching and Learning.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really, we have two policies that are both HR policies that are going to be reviewed today. Policy 5.14, official personnel files, and 5.3111, mandatory reporting. So Mr. Dodig will be leading us in that policy review.
Thank you very much. Mr. Dodig?
Yeah, so I'm trying to pull them up here, but I may not have much success. Let's see. Here we go. Okay. So the first one is the personnel file policy that has existed almost, looks like it was adopted in 2012. Well, it's being amended, and it's being amended to include the Neola policy language. Both of these policies are policies that the board attorney indicated to Human Resources that we should update immediately. So that's why they're before you. It includes language from Section 101231 Florida statutes that is specifically in the statute. That's essentially all of the red language and underlined language. The language from our previous policy that will continue in the policy if it's approved as is starts on page 2 and goes on to page 3 about what is in our official personnel files. So I'm hopeful to answer any questions along with the board attorney you might have.
Board members, any questions or comments regarding the personnel file policy 5.14? Ms. Jordan?
I'm just curious why Mr. Dupree Bruno felt that this was one that needed to be pushed up. I would love to hear that, please.
There's another policy, the mandatory reporting, which is part of a new statute in terms of investigations and when they have to be reported to both to the parents and the obligations of law enforcement. So this actually coincides with that personnel file policy.
Did you have something, Ms. Giovanelli? Oh, I'm good. All right.
Okay.
I
All
think
right.
so.
The
Yeah.
next policy. Just go in here. Is the policy the board attorney just referred to. That's the mandatory reporting of misconduct policy, which would be a new policy. However, if you look at the top of that policy, all of the policies listed had information regarding these requirements in them. So this is essentially consolidating the reporting requirements. And the reporting requirements in this policy deal with parental notification, filing a complaint with DOE, reporting a resignation or termination of someone that's being investigated, what happens if you transmit a false report. There is also language I would note in that paragraph 6 regarding board members and making allegations or knowingly signing something that you know to be false. There is the requirement that we can't have a confidentiality agreement with an employee that leaves the district, which has been in the law for quite some time. And then there's a posting requirement, which requires us to post this not only at schools in a prominent place, this policy, but also on each school's website. which we'll be doing once the board approves this. And then there's new language about liability, or the lack of thereof, or immunity, I should say, of someone who makes a complaint regarding misconduct. Any questions?
Board members? Ms. Gittens?
Actually, it was on the one about personnel files, but
Okay.
if you don't want to go back, it's okay.
No, that's fine.
On, let me see which one it is. It's line, talking about the 10 days, where it says any material derogatory to an employee should not be open to inspection for an additional 10 days after the employee has been notified. So in other words, 10 days, if I get in trouble, then it's public.
So if a letter of reprimand is put in your personnel file,
Right.
it does not become public record for 10 days after you receive notice of that document.
Okay. And it's sent by certified mail. What about reviewing your file? Is that in this same one?
Yes, in fact, if you look at the last page, line 126, I'll put it up here in front of you. It indicates the employee shall have access to his or her file upon request.
Okay, because at one point, you had access. Access is pivotal because, people were being told that there would be a copy made of information, you had to pay for it, and then you could see it. How is that process now?
I'd have to,
And if
Dr.
it's, you
Carlin's
can get
here,
it
and
to me later. You can get it to me later.
yeah, and communications, I think they essentially have someone, you can come in and review your file on the computer along with someone sitting next to you, and then you could also request a hard copy file.
Okay, we'll talk after. Thank you.
Dr. Bernier, did you have, no? Okay. All right, any other questions or comments about either one of these policies? Seeing none, I'll thank Mr. Dodig.
We'll be back again. This is the first reading, so.
Okay, yes.
Thank you.
This is actually going to be the pre-brief, and then we will come back again for the first
First
reading.
reading.
We're waiting to have a good slew of policy since we have to advertise and all of that wonderful thing. Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, this will actually be the pre-brief, and we will come back to the board for the first reading, and we're going to wait till we have a set of policies to bring back to the board because of the advertising cost, and since we have to properly notice it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda is public comment. Ms. Attorney Dupree Bruno, will you please address the issue of public comment?
Thank you, Madam Chair. School board policy provides the opportunity at this point of the meeting to address the board concerning any matter on this meeting's agenda. If you completed a public comment card, please provide it in the basket or to the staff. The public comment will be held at the podium in the center aisle in the front. Please be advised that the board will not respond during public comment to remarks made by speakers. Speakers who fail to follow proper decorum in the chambers will be ruled out of order. Any speaker continuing with such remarks will be required to relinquish the microphone per Board Policy 1.11 and may be removed from the chambers. There will be one warning. Per Board Policy 1.11, the time per speaker is 3 minutes. You will find a countdown on the big screen in the front of the room. Once your time has elapsed, the microphone will automatically shut off. Please state your name when you approach the microphone. Madam Chair, there is one speaker that wishes to address the board at this briefing.
Okay, is there anyone else in the audience who did not fill in a blue card and wishes to speak? Attorney Dupree Bruno, please call the name.
Tara Jenner.
Good afternoon. I was looking at that most recent policy that you guys had up on the board there dealing with individuals being investigated or evaluated for lewd and inappropriate behavior. And I fully understand the need to protect somebody while they're going through due process so that their character and their reputation isn't maligned in the event that nothing really is substantiated in the end. However, I do have some concerns because when I was looking through it, and I was doing it pretty briefly because the internet connection here always cuts you off, as to whether or not there is a policy or not on removing that individual temporarily and having a substitute in their place if they're interacting with students to safeguard students in the meantime. I know when I did hospital work and we had a physician whose medical abilities were being questioned or brought under investigation for whether or not they should continue their credentialing, we would have them removed with pay while we were pending an investigation to safeguard potential patients from potential ineffective medical care and treatment. So I was just kind of curious as to whether or not you had anything in place for that. And the second thing that I wanted to mention, dealing with your equity guide and Title IX, I was wondering if you guys have looked at and considered the potential ramifications of the upcoming discussions that have been going on in DC when it comes to withholding of Title IX fundings, including food resources and so forth, if we comply with Florida state statute versus what that potential modification might be. I do remind the board that we have been coming, a number of us, for quite a while, talking about and requesting that the board consider having a line item zero-based budget so that you can even determine in the first place whether or not we need federal funding from the get-go. That might actually solve some of the problems here. So I'm going to encourage the board to consider putting forward now, you don't need to wait, a requirement that over the course of the next year or so that you phase in a zero-based line item budget so that we can see whether or not we even need to have Title IX funding. Because my concern is the federal government has overextended. The authority of the federal government granted to them and delegated by the states is for war, peace, negotiation, and foreign commerce, and even then only on condition that it is in the best interest of the general welfare. Education was never delegated to them. And to make sure that this was clear, we have Amendment 10 in the United States Constitution, which specifically says anything that's not specifically delegated to the federal government is retained by the states and the people. That includes education. We need to tell the federal government to go pound sand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jenner. Okay. We appreciate your comments. And now, next on the agenda is good of the order. Does anyone at the table have anything for good of the order? Ms. Morgan?
And this is not about the motion. This is a totally different topic that I want to bring up. At our last workshop on the policy, one of the things that was made clear to us is that we're going to run out of time and we're going to consume a lot of money if we don't get better organized with respect to policies. I wanted to just mention that when I sent in my comments back in July in response to the board attorney's request, I presumed incorrectly that information would be used by Neola and the board attorney to identify areas of disagreement or lack of clarity for board members so that we could pull those out and focus on them. And instead what we've been doing is consuming a lot of time working, line by line through some of these policies and not really getting to the meat of what it is that we have to do as a board on policy. So my question is simply, is there some way we can direct either Neola or the board attorney to aggregate all of the information they got from us back in July and just try to identify policies that require some real investment of time on the part of the board and have those conversations away from Neola rather than using those conversations to chew up Neola time? I don't know if that's clear, but thank you for listening.
Thank you. Any comments or response? Any further discussion? Ms. Jordan?
Well, I think I had spoke with Ms. Dupree Bruno regarding, did we have to use them for all of this conversations? Because if that's something that we can do amongst ourselves and then bring them in to finalize the policies. Because I know that we are looking at every minute that we spend with them is a bill that's coming up. Is that right, Ms. Dupree Bruno? Is that something we can do?
Can you respond?
So I will have to discuss this with Neola. I will tell you that changes that were received and there were not, sorry. Still getting used to the new microphone. I will tell you that the changes that were received, and it was not a lot of board members that actually provided changes, those were shared with Neola. And then Neola takes that, but they're not going to make the changes to the policies until they come back to the board and they get some type of consensus from the board as to those changes. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is their process. They have a very, very specific process on how they move forward with this huge project in terms of changing over into their policies. Even the Neola project team has been talking to them and trying to tweak their process to fit our needs here in the district. So I'll have another discussion with them, but I will tell you that based on the conversations that I have had with them, this is their process, and that's what you can expect to have from them. They like to come in and actually go through the policies with the board. Prior to that, they will be going through the policies with staff to make sure that any of the staff changes and recommendations, et cetera, have been done. And then they come to the board. So I'll talk to them, but that's pretty much how they have done it with other districts. And they've already made some concessions for us too in the process, because they normally like to have all of the thousands done prior to even coming to the board. So we are working with our staff constraints as well as their requests to try to come up with the best procedure for the board. And the other thing I would just say too is that the bylaws are, Neola really wanted the board, as it does with all districts that utilize them, to own those bylaws. So they wanted the board to roll up its sleeve and have those discussions with regards to the bylaws. Once we finish the bylaws, the other policies that will be coming forth will be policies that have gone through staff, where staff has sat down and done some of the preliminary work with Neola, explaining why this change and that change, and then the final product from that discussion is what will be coming to the board.
Thank you, Attorney Bruno. Ms. Jordan?
So then perhaps if we know that we're going to look at XYZ, policy 101 to 105 or whatever, and we know that those specific ones have the boxes that we have to respond to, if we could have maybe in advance notice that these are the ones that we're going to absolutely go through, so that way we can make sure that we are doing our due diligence, making sure that we know which boxes, so that way we're not having that conversation there. It's limited conversation. We will have it, but it will be limited because we've already looked at what those boxes are. We have copies of those. We can write anything we want on ours, so when we come, we're definitely prepared to have that conversation, and it will minimize the discussion.
Yeah. So you
It's
have,
just my opinion.
Thank you, Ms. Jordan.
you have one more workshop that will be bylaws workshop. After that, it will be the policies being forth by staff, and those boxes and all of those things, those decisions would already have been made by the administration. So when it comes to you, it will be the full final version of the policy that staff is asking you to take a look at.
Thank you. Ms. Gittens?
In one sense, I kind of agree with some of the board members of saying how much time and all it's taking. So my thought was perhaps we could look at having a work day that is a full day, that's what we do, is look at policies and just kind of knock it out and do large sections of it, that's all we have to worry about, not thinking, well, it's 3 o'clock and we've got another meeting coming. And it's important enough. I agree with the fact that we're spending a lot of money doing it. So why couldn't we set a workshop that that's all we would do? And possibly off-site or something like that. Prior to that, we'd have everything laid out. We can know exactly, we're going to do this one, this one, this one, and just go down the line. I have found, even though it's on board docs, it was difficult for me to keep up with it on board docs because of the way it was done. I would have liked to have seen it like numerical order or something, because you'd go here and then they bounce back here and we do A of this one and 1 of this one. So if there was a agenda that we're going to cover this, and this in this order, and that way everybody's on the same page, and we just go into a place and knock it out and do it as much as possible in one day. I just think that would be a lot more feasible, and we could get it done. We could help Neola and et cetera. So just my thought.
Thank you, Ms. Gittens. Any response to that?
So that's something that will have to go to the project team as well as to Neola, and then, of course, discussion with the superintendent in terms of timing for the workshop and those types of things, and see what's feasible.
Any other comments or suggestions or questions? Okay, then, Mr. Pre-Bruno, will you facilitate that discussion?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is board member comments and reports. So we'll begin at the end of the table with Mrs. Morgan.
Okay, I sent all of you an email yesterday saying I'm going to bring a motion this evening, and I'm going to take the time this afternoon to try to give you an understanding of why I'm bringing this motion in a context. At our last board meeting, I made comments regarding the role and responsibility of the board with respect to legal services. Listening to the responses made by several board members, it was clear more explanation was needed, specifically a response to comments that we don't need to look back and we don't need to look at practices elsewhere. From Board Policy 1.07 Strategic Plan, quote, "The school district of Lee County shall maintain a 3-year district strategic plan which will be used by the superintendent and school board as a guide for decision making. This plan shall represent the desired state for the future. The DSP shall also define the outcomes that will lead to the attainment of these goals, the metrics that will be used to determine progress towards these outcomes, and specific objectives related to the outcomes." Question that comes up then is, what was our desired state for the newly created legal services team? What was the expected outcome? And how would we know that we had achieved that outcome? The strategic plan process includes a review process from Board Policy 1.08, quality focus for continuous improvement. The School Board of Lee County is committed to the principles and practices of continuous improvement. The philosophy of continuous improvement shall be implemented by the school board. This approach shall support the vision and mission of the district and shall be reflected in the district's strategic planning process. So the strategic plan is the look forward. Continuous improvement is a process of reflecting on action plans implemented in support of that initiative. Identify, plan, execute, review. Looking back and validating, refining, modifying as evidence warrants. So here's my first observation. Since the creation of legal services, we have had 100% staff turnover and evidence of compensation inequity. Here's a context with respect to the district. When evidence of increased turnover in schools is provided to the board members, we ask the superintendent to provide information. Was this the result of the need to change a school culture or way of work? Was it the result of a new principal needing leadership and guidance in a new role? Why the high turnover? We always ask. We expect an explanation, and we expect an understanding of corrective actions that may be required. Observation 2. Why should we look at what other districts are doing? Because as a district, we embrace the need to identify and use best practices in classrooms, schools, departments in the district. Best practices include researching what similar institutions are doing in areas of common operations. Again, context in terms of the district. We expect our district and school leadership to learn and grow in their leadership roles by engaging with colleagues across the state and the country, learning how others handle common problems. Looking for best practices in providing legal services to staff was the genesis of board discussions in 2017, 18, and 19 about changing the organization and operation of legal services. I want to make one last observation. Finally, our board self-evaluation was summarized in May 2022. For board standard goal 3 strategy, the board governs with a focus on achieving the district mission and vision. The overall score was 2.44 or needs improvement. The lowest indicator for that standard was in section 3.02. In workshops, briefings, and regular meetings, the board engages in continuous improvement using relevant information and gold standard qualitative and quantitative analyses while promoting and supporting reflective governance decisions. Our board score was 2.0, one of the lowest scores we got. And that's what I'm talking about here, is how we do planning and continuous improvement. So this speaks directly to the question I put before you. What action plans have we considered to address our deficiency as a board? And isn't a review of the legal services team an opportunity to perform those supervisory duties? I will be offering a motion at our meeting asking the board to place a moratorium. I think you all have all of that in front of you. I hope one of you will second the motion at that time so we can show staff and the public that we hold ourselves accountable using the same best practices for which we hold district staff and leadership accountable. Now, here's a context. This is a 121-page grand jury report that was issued. For those of you who have not taken the opportunity to read the final report of the 20th grand jury, which was an investigation of school safety issues in Florida, I encourage you to do so. Based on its findings, the grand jury recommended removal of Broward County board members for failure to perform their duties, the action that was taken by the governor on Friday. If you're unfamiliar with the report, it begins with the stated goal of enacting change in management of certain school districts. They're looking to change school district management, and that's us and the superintendent and the board attorney. And while the report focuses on Broward's lack of leadership and oversight of their bond referendum and assessor, the findings make specific reference to the roles and responsibilities of certain board members and their failures. Failure to plan. The board made a strategic decision and failed to monitor deliverables and outcomes. Failure to lead. Lack of steady and effective board leadership and performance of their constitutional obligations. Failure to inform. The board failed to engage in public discussion about the concerns brought by a minority of board members regarding plan outcomes. Failure to account. The board failed to address performance issues raised in evaluations of direct reports. And I'm really talking about our self-evaluation. I'm really, in this case, not talking about our evaluation of the superintendent or the board attorney, because I really think this is about our work and what we do. And I'm going to quote from the report. A board member, when questioned regarding accountability, questioned, the phrase you used was that if individuals in roles of authority are not able to meet expectations, you should identify what improvements need to be made and institute methods to ensure expectations are met. You were comfortable. Are you comfortable holding Mr. Runcie to that standard? Answer, yes. Are you comfortable if that standard is applied to the school board? Answer, I don't believe that is appropriate. comment. Au contraire, it is not only appropriate, but long overdue. Essentially, I am asking the board to do due diligence by evaluating its strategic decision. Questions have been asked at the board table and not answered. This motion does not seek or presume a particular outcome. In fact, the conclusion of the review may result in no change at all to the current path. As the grand jury report makes evident, the performance of our duties is more critical than completing the exercise and concluding no change is necessary. So that's the background to the motion I will bring this evening, and I hope someone will support it so we can have that conversation at the board table. Thank you very much. Those are my comments.
Thank you very much, Ms. Morgan. Ms. Vaughn. Well, I didn't have anything planned, but I am looking forward to that discussion this evening, especially as the person on this board who has made it a mantra, this is not, or as I would say more colloquially, this ain't your grandpa's Lee County. And so it'll be very interesting, because I think, well, I'm not going to even say what I think right now. We'll just see how it all comes out. So I look forward to it, and I don't have any further comments. Thank you very much. Ms. Gittens?
Yes, I really don't have very many comments, but I do want to say I look forward to this evening as well. From the preamble that we just heard, I'm a little confused, because I'm hearing a lot of that it's our duty and what we haven't done and our evaluation. And all I'll say about our evaluation as a board, it didn't have anything to do with different departments. It had to do with us individually as board members and how that interaction was. So I will reserve until this evening as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jordan?
I have no comments.
Okay. Ms. Patrica?
We have a really busy agenda tonight. A lot of public comment, a lot of, and I have to tell you all that I have to leave at 8:55 because I have an emergency family meeting at 9 o'clock. So I'm hopeful that I could ask the chair to please call on Ms. Morgan tonight first for her board member comments, so that I can be part of that discussion in the event it goes after 9 o'clock.
If I may, we have public hearings tonight, so
Yes.
they will have 3 minutes to speak on each one of those items. So I just want you to understand that is going to...
I understand.
Okay.
I just wanted to throw that out there. And if I may, through the chair, I have a question, and I'm not sure to whom the question should be directed, whether it's the superintendent, Ms. Gittens as the liaison to the audit committee, or Attorney Jabri Bruno, but where do we stand in terms of RSM? We received an SOW on the 18th, and I expected it to be on tonight's agenda, and I don't see it there, so I'm curious as to where we are.
We have received the SOW. I know that it went to legal. Legal had a question regarding the hourly wage, the hourly focus, because they had, in the past, they charged us so much per hour when they were here. Now there was a delineation of the same cost, but by the number of people that were here. So if they brought 2 people, it would be 2 times the cost, or 3, it would be 3 times the cost. I know Attorney Dupuy Bruno has been in touch with them, so I'll let her pick it up from there.
So we completed those negotiations. They did resolve that particular issue and brought it back to the original language that we had approved before. I just want one more department to give it a review, and then once that's completed, we will finalize it and it can be brought before the board.
Great, thank you. A couple other updates for the board, if I may, during my board member comments, because obviously I'm not going to do it tonight. I did attend FSBA Executive Officer Training. It was an abbreviated version of that training because we have some executive officers that were running for office and didn't have time to give it a full day at a location, all of that. I will tell you, your executive officers are going to be very, very busy this year. especially with COSBA, which is my next update. I did attend their federal issues training, and to say that I was disappointed in it, I think is a bit of an understatement. And I will be having ongoing conversations with Andrea Messina and Bev Slough, who is, the person from FSBA who's doing that. It was very, it was just disappointing to me. That's really all I want to say about it. Dr. Bernier, you mentioned the announcements at halftime regarding the half-penny sales tax. Well, I was at Island Coast for my son's game. I'm going to be attending my son's games at various high schools throughout the season, and they had branding on the front of their, what's that thing called? Programs. Which was, I just think it's phenomenal. I get very excited whenever I see announcements regarding the half-penny sales tax. So both of those things were very much noticed in my attendance at a football game this weekend. Those are my comments. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Giovanelli.
Red means on, right? Does it sound good? Okay. Real quick regarding the actual motion, there was a date mentioned of August 17th, 21, and I haven't had a chance to review that. Since I think we have time now, I will review that, and hopefully that will shed some light more on the motion. And I too look forward to this evening in that discussion. And I'm so glad that you brought up the Broward County document that the what was it? The grand jury. Thank you, because this is something that I've been talking about it for years, and I see things very differently. I can go on. I sleep very well at night because I've talked about FEMA contracts, locks, and indoor air quality contracts, investigations, lawsuits regarding the Sunshine lawsuit that we lost because we did not give the documents to protect a school board member. And this goes on and on. Watermarking, manipulated investigations for a specific outcome that usually doesn't affect the district. They're clean and hands are always clean, which you wouldn't have a complaint if there wasn't some sort of truth to any of it. So let's talk who voted for not to have investigations, who wanted investigations, who wanted a forensic audit, and we did not get the forensic audit because we didn't have the votes. So accountability is huge so far as it needs to we have never held anyone accountable for anything. And so now we're going to start now. Okay, because of a grand jury indictment at Broward County. Well, we've got fabricated whistleblower complaints and whistleblower complaints that are not fabricated. We've got whistleblower complaints against board members. So this goes on. This is because we've had staff that's ran rogue because of prior administration. No offense to you, Dr. Bernier. You've been, I think, on track and wonderful. So I appreciate that. But this goes way back long ago. And so I can't wait to continue that conversation tonight because honestly, we as a board have not been doing our job. We have been derelict on this job duty. And it's time that we decide, are we going to do our job? Are we going to sit back and be a go along, get along, stamp the contracts, stamp the voting and just vote it all, everything in, whatever the superintendent and the staff says. I haven't done that. I can sleep very well at night. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Giovanelli. I'll just comment briefly that September is Attendance Awareness Month, and I'd like to thank Tammy Scott and the rest of that team for the work that they are doing to ensure better attendance, not only with our students, but with our staff. I'm looking forward to the first town hall on September 1st in the West Zone with Dr. Bernier regarding the proximity plan. And I appreciated the information on the 360 evaluation for the superintendent, and I do believe in accountability. I want to thank Mrs. Morgan for bringing her information forward and explaining why she is making that motion this evening. I look forward to the discussion. I will second it because I think the discussion needs to ensue. We are here for the purpose of setting policy and to ensure that school districts are responsible to the values, beliefs, and priorities of their communities. So I appreciate this opportunity, and I look forward to this evening. And again, to thank you for the staff who always works so hard and gets a lot accomplished, and for the progress that we have made, even in the face of the pandemic. I do appreciate all of the efforts. And also, I, again, welcome to Dr. Ramirez and Ms. McCoy and Dr. Bernier. Thank you. Ms. Bruno, any comments?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, and Superintendent Bernier.
Just a couple. I think real value to members of the community to know that state statute and separate policy speak to the conditions related to the removal of an employee from their position during an ongoing investigation. It depends on what that investigation is for an employee, what the alleged misconduct is, but there is a separate policy and separate statute that allows a district to move forward like that. Divestiture of federal money would be a very interesting conversation, but I would say that we are paying very close attention as a staff and the legal department as to what's transpiring in Washington right now and the conflicting guidance that we've been receiving both from the state and from the federal government. I will tell you that what we have decided as a group is that we will follow the direction while there's competing guidance and not case law. We will follow the guidance of our governor and the state of Florida. So that has been communicated both to all of you as well as to the members within the Florida Department of Education. Real quickly, it is September. September is Student Attendance Month. I want to call out Rob Mazzoli at Tropical Isles. Had a great visit this morning, saw all the signs about parent pickup loop and how to drive forward and how to manage your time and release your child. But on the back side of the board as I was leaving, which they turn around in the afternoon, is the percentage of daily attendance for their school, and it's broken down by each grade level. So the kindergartners were at 98% today, one of the other classes was at 93%, but overall the school was at about 95% today, if I'm recalling the board correctly. But what a great visual message to the parents on a daily basis about the importance of school attendance. We joked as I left and shook his hand that we can't teach them if they're not there. We got to have them in class. So I just wanted to take an opportunity to share a really cool strategy that one of our schools is using. Thank you for the shout out regarding the town halls. Very excited about getting started with those. Hopefully for the last time this evening, I'll say this again. We had an incident concerning a parking space at a high school. I had a great conversation with the parents of that student. My direction, I asked for the phone numbers, reached out to them directly. It was an amazing opportunity to talk with the dad and really make sure that he understood where we're coming from. The parking lot has been repainted with the original design, and I do want the school district of Lee County and members of the community to understand that we have great respect for our law enforcement officials. I've spent many hours as I go into a school building now shaking the hand of the SRO and making sure they understand specifically where we stand. I've reached out to the police chiefs and to the sheriffs in particular. And I just want to be really cognizant of the fact that we're so proud of our partnerships with law enforcement. They have been great partners for us related to school safety. And then finally, in case people tune out and don't watch us this evening, I'd like to remind everybody that we have an extra day this weekend to rest and relax. It is Labor Day, and I can tell you from the classroom visits, our principals meeting coming up this week, our labor, our bus drivers, our teachers, our everyone's are working really, really hard. And I hope that they enjoy the additional day, and I hope the staff seated in this room and listening in other places does the same. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bernier. Well, we're way ahead of time, so we have plenty of time to look up information. This evening at 5:30, we'll rejoin the group here for student performance, followed at 6 p.m. by the action meeting. And seeing no other business to come before this board, this meeting is adjourned.